Okay, I think we're going... Oh, I forgot my headphones. I want to put those on. Oh, oops. Helps if I change the stream name. Edit stream info. This is part 7. We're in part 7 now. Super exciting. It's still pretty chilly in my house, so I'm still wearing a blanket this episode. But you know, we're chilling. Quite literally, because it's cold. You see what I did there? Yep. The stream candle has finished. It's gotten kaput, so I'm going to get a fresh one from under the bed, and then start the stream candle, and we'll be ready to go. I know this one's not on the schedule, but my timeline has kind of changed recently, so I figured it would be as good a time as any. I wasn't busy, you know, so might as well learn some HTML. Alright, I'm going to grab a stream candle, get that lit, and then be right back in the seat to continue on. So I figured I would show you some of the options that we have for the stream candle before we get started. So we have 3 different, I guess they're, yeah, I'm going to call them 3 different pink options. Ooh, there we go. So pink, purpley pink, and then like lighter pink, and then like orange, and then the 2 like marble blue, and then the regular stone blue. So I'm gonna go with this one. Actually, I changed my mind. I was grabbing for one of the darker pink, but I'm going with this like marbled pink one. See what it says it is. Watermelon sorbet. Not my favorite. Gonna get that one out of the way. Not a huge fan of the watermelon. When it's like fresh and real, I love it. Love watermelon. But like fake watermelon, I'm like, maybe not. But yeah, those are the candles. Not sure why I felt the need to show that to you. Okay, we're going in. Today I have tea instead of hot chocolate. Camera's doing all sorts of weird stuff. It thinks I'm places I'm not. That's cool. Oh, did not light the first time, but it lit that time. So we are good to go. Okay. Just going to open our notebook up to the correct page. Need to find where I put our pen. See, I'm normally more organized than this, and I'm so sorry that I am kind of dropping. I was too organized. I had it sitting right next to the computer. Wow. Amazing. So I have the lesson pulled up in my VM. Here it is. Oops. Not sure why there's that. But what I'm gonna do right quick is just copy down this boilerplate template. Yeah, just so that I have a physical reminder of it, we're going to delete all of the code that's in there, try to redo it without the shortcut, and then go back again and double check that it's correct. So, here we go. So every HTML index page or HTML page should have the brackets, exclamation point, doc type, HTML. HTML is lowercase. And then HTML lang equals EN, and that's because we're working in English. And then under that, we're going to have a head. So that has our meta char set equals UTF-8, our meta HTTP-equiv. I don't know that all of those were actually necessary within the lesson. I'm just going to double check what we had written. Yeah, so we just have the meta char set, character set -8, so I'm just going to leave it as that for now. We can come back in and add more later, but for now I'm just leaving it as a 1. And then we're going to add our title, and then my title is going to be text, and then /title. And then that ends our head, so -head, /head, sorry. And then we have within our HTML as well, we'll have a body, so body. And then H1 is going to be header, says hello world, or whatever text. And then /H1, and then end body, end HTML. Alright, so we have our outline. I've written it down so I have a better comprehension on it. What we're going to do now is we are going to open up VS Code, which is right here. And we're going to start from scratch. So that is doc type HTML. And yes, I am using the little tab completion because it is very helpful. HTML lang equals English. Great. Meta character set equals UTF-8 end bracket, and then title. I love that it auto-completes. That's just so nice. Oh, helps if I have the head, doesn't it? Yeah, it does. Not so great. Not so great to start. Alright, we have a head. And this time, I'm going to need to cut and then paste that puppy. And then I'm going to fix my white space, so I'm going to just tab the next one over so it looks nice, easy to read. Then we're going to do our body, and then we'll have our H1, more text. And that's the whole thing. So I did that primarily because it said to. And it's good for practice also, but it did ask me to perform that step. Cool. Now we're gonna watch the building your first web page video. It's kind of cool that he has a whole series. That's nice. So I haven't linked to it, but here is this web series by Kevin Powell. Definitely go and check it out. Seems like good. Okay. So we already have one of these. This is VS Code that we have open actually on this machine. Oh, buffering. Sorry about that. Nice. Ooh, the quality. So sorry. I'm just gonna bump that up if we can. Yeah, looks like we can bump that up. I'm gonna let it pause for a second. So I'm just writing down the steps that we've learned both with Odin Project and that are being outlined in this video itself. So the first thing that we would do in making a new website would be to create a folder either in a projects directory or our desktop directory, just somewhere on our computer, and name that as our website name or our project name. So in his example, he had made a folder on his desktop listed at named as my first website, and then he opened that folder within his text editor and created a file. You can also do that from the terminal, so you could say make directory my first website and then touch index.html, and that would create your file within the directory. Then you could open that file specifically, or you could open the entire directory to VS Code and your file would already be loaded in. So those are the first 3 steps. Create the directory, and then the next 2, it's like the order is up to you. Either create the file within the directory index.html or open a text editor and create the file within the text editor index.html. So I'm just writing those down for my future reference. While this is buffering, but it's buffered at this point, so I'm going to get back to the video. That sounds painful. Wow. It just looks bad. Mm-hmm. Nice. Yep. Hmm. Cool. I'm gonna stop that there because I feel like we've gotten the information from that. But awesome. So we have now watched and followed along with Kevin Powell's Build Your First Website web page, sorry. And then build some muscle memory. We wrote down our boilerplate and the first 3 steps, which would be creating a directory, creating file, opening in VS Code. And then we'll run our boilerplate through the W3 HTML validator or this HTML validator. It ensures that your markup is correct and that you're and they provide feedback on syntax errors you may be making often and aren't aware of, such as missing a close tag or an extra space. So I'm going to find our boilerplate again. I think I'm fairly happy with this, so I'm just going to hit save right quick, like 7 times, as I do And then I'm gonna go to the desktop. And then find our index.html, open that. Wow. So our title is text, our content, our body heading was more text, so it looks like it functions. So our address here is going to be that. Hopefully it will run. Cannot be checked because it's not a URL. File upload interface. Here we go. This is what I want. Okay. On the desktop, HTML boilerplate, index HTML. And we're going to check it and see what it says. No errors or warnings to show. So, sounds like we did it. We did it. This is still like very, very simple so far, but cool. Additional resources, so we can read a little bit about what character sets we could use or what we should use. I think I'll probably be staying with UTF-8 for a little while, just because that seems pretty standard. And then I will exit out of our GUI. So, HTML encoding references for beginners, understanding character sets. HTML encoding is used in order for a web page to parse non-ASCII characters in HTML documents with a standard form. It's the process to send header information to the server, so that the text is displayed as text, not as HTML code. If you're a beginner at HTML programming, this article is here to give you a complete idea about character encoding in a markup writing. So our table of contents is as follows. Highlights what is character encoding, understanding ASCII character set, encoding UTF-8 character set, URL encoding, character encoding, HTML encoding, bunch of stuff. Ooh, we have a chatbot. Hi, chatbot. Or not a bot, but an offer for bot. Wow, thanks. I'm going to make this a little bigger. So I'm encroaching upon the screen. Ha ha ha. Thanks for stopping by and dropping a comment. Cool. I'm going to go back to this main page and see what this was. So another option for opening your HTML pages in the browser is using the live server extension with VS Code. This will open your HTML page or HTML document and automatically refresh it every time you save the code. However, we recommend not using this extension and instead doing it the old-fashioned way by opening the page and refreshing manually. So this, and this way you can get used to that process and won't become reliant on extensions right away. One reason is that there may be subtle differences when using extensions. For example, live server will always use UTF-8 character encoding and not the value you defined in your meta character attribute. So if you used a different one, could potentially hide some characters on your site because they aren't encoded the way you expect. And then if you wish, you can add the lang attribute to individual elements throughout the website. So this doc has a better understanding of the lang attribute. This might actually be interesting to me just because okay, but this is a lot about like accessibility and stuff, which is awesome stuff. Cool. So, if we were to start writing in another language, which I do occasionally, I have some words that I use that are not English, then we would change the lang attribute to whatever language it was, and I'm sure that there is a big long key of which languages are which letters. So that is it. This is the language subtag lookup. So if I wanted to speak in Norwegian, Nynorsk, then I would use NN. But if I wanted to use bokmål, I haven't done much in bokmål, so I would use NB. Yep. If we wanted to use French, that would be probably FR. FR, and if we wanted to use Spanish, BES. Those are really the only ones that I would use, I think, because I don't have the kanji for Japanese. Cool, so I'm going to exit out of this one. I feel fairly confident, or I feel like I understand why you would use the lang tag. And then I'm just gonna, I think it's the T. Yesterday, yeah, I mean, because I was yawning like this yesterday too, if you'll remember. Okay, so I'm marking this lesson as complete. I know you have some outstanding reading to do, so I'm just going to open this up right now, do a quick skim, but I'm hoping not to spend too much time on this. So this article helps with understanding HTML character encoding, how to declare encoding in HTML documents, HTML references for URL code encoding, what is ASCII character set, application of meta character set UTF-8. So the large number of characters used in markup writing necessitates the use of character encoding. Markup authors particularly need this technique when working with foreign languages, high-tech mathematical symbols, and other special characters in addition to the standard Latin letters and Arabic numbers. Because the text can often collide with standard code. For example, take the use of less than or greater than signs. If not encoded properly, the browser would interpret these characters as the start and close of HTML tags, a complete misinterpretation that could make your content look alien. So you see, it's not only a matter of human reliability, servers and browsers must also be able to understand your data. So that makes sense, because if you were to put any sort of math or anything like that in your code, in the body words, speaking, into your content on your page, then that would potentially kind of mess with it. Character encoding is basically a mapping technique to define text and bytes separately within HTML documents. To understand encoding, authors must understand what characters are. So characters denote alphabetic letters, punctuation, special characters, and other elements that make up the entire content. The information is stored in a computer as a sequence of bytes. I hate this. A sequence of bytes and numeric values. A single character can sometimes be represented by more than one byte. Text, images, graphics, video, data compilations, and all other forms of information that appear on a website are made up of characters in website content. What key was used to encode the text determines how the sequence of bytes is converted to characters. In this case, the key is referred to as character encoding. The importance of URLs. A URL is used by a web browser to request pages from web servers. The browsers can only decipher the ASCII character set, which has only 128 characters, and only 95 out of which are printable. But URLs often need characters outside of the 128 characters. Character encoding is used to define the foreign character sets in this case. On the browser side, documents with different HTML encodings would appear differently. It is in the control and disposal of the markup author to use them appropriately. Understanding ASCII character sets and in the HTML character encoding reference. ASCII is a transmission code derived from the American Standard Code for Information Exchange that was created in 1960. It could be used on basic electronic devices and computers to exchange letters, punctuation, and numbers, and control characters that are non-printable. Characters based on telex technology such as line breaks or taps. The ASCII codes work a lot like how calculators were, wherein binary systems run the entire computational system. With 7 bits, 7 digits that indicate either a 0 or a 1, the original ASCII standard defines different characters. It altogether defines only 128 or 27 characters, out of which there are 33 non-printable and 95 printable. Additionally, the 8th bit, which is 1 full bit, is still used to check data. This exact bit is used in the ASCII-based extended versions to increase the number of available characters to 256. Even though the UTF-8 character set has become more important when presenting text, the 7-bit ASCII version is still widely used today. UTF-8 has the privilege of being quite backward compatible since it is a subset of ASCII. Therefore, it recognizes the binary 128 characters. The old encoding method is still used in emails and URLs because ASCII is the lowest common denominator of most new encoding forms. Okay, there are several benefits to using UTF-8, but above all, it is fully compatible with ASCII characters, which make it the go-to tool for writing markup for foreign language pages. Furthermore, it can be used with native XML markup also to declare UTF-8 encoded HTML character sets. You need the following tag. So this is what we've seen already. I think it's kind of cute that they have two different depictions of the quotation marks. These ones are like double commas, and these ones are like actual double apostrophes. I just thought that was cute. Insert a meta tag followed by a character set attribute and set UTF-8 as the character value. Many languages can be supported by Unicode-based encodings like UTF-8, which can accommodate pages and forms in any combination of those languages, so your content is free from the rule of server-side logic to display the character encoding for each page served for individual form submissions. Unicode Transformation Format 8-bit, or simply UTF-8, is the current industry standard encoding format, as defined by the Unicode standard, which was developed by the nonprofit Unicode Consortium in the 1990s. The UTF-8, UTF-16, and UTF-32 character encoding formats have all been published by the organizations over the years. In 2008, the UTF-8 HTML character encoding format was released. By 2019, it will be used on more than 90% of all websites. The World Web Consortium also recommends using it as the default HTML character encoding. Alright then. HTML URL encoding. The process of application. Oops, I skipped one. Addressing page requests efficiently. Since the internet can only understand the ASCII character set, URL encoding is the golden rule of converting all non-ASCII characters into readable or compatible characters. Invalid ASCII characters are replaced with a percent sign without quotation marks, followed by 2 hexadecimal numbers in the URL. I've seen this before. Spaces are considered invalid characters in URLs. In most cases, the HTML space encoding replaces a space with a plus sign or a %20 sign. Thus, in HTML encoding, UTF plays a key role and it is not case sensitive. You can type in any manner, just ensure it is there. HTML character encoding, the process of application. A tag in the header of thoroughly encoded web pages declares the encoding to the browser. If your web page doesn't have this tag in place, the browser will be unable to interpret your content page, leading to gibberish portions within the content. I think we've all seen this in older websites. The process of interpreting the characters, elements, and attributes within an HTML tag is altogether referred to as tag encoding. Tag encoding is particularly crucial for open-loop platforms like payment gateways. Imagine if the system crashes while a payment transaction is processing. It's a serious threat to customers and a big responsibility for web developers and content authors, so be careful. Markup authors are always prompted that declaring the HTML document is not how you can direct the server to change the bytes. The text files must be saved in the same encoding to complete the process. If you're using an editor software, it is most likely to have the UTF-8 encoding by default. However, if you are working on local files on your computer, you may want to recheck the settings. And if it is not already your desired encoding, then change it. Working with XML and XHTML. Since HTTP headers often take the precedent over in-document meta declarations, authors should always check if HTTP header already has the declaration by default. Of course, that is considering if they have access to it. If it is already declared, then the same should go for the meta element. However, if you are working with XML documents, meta declarations may not work. Until and unless you are migrating your HTML document to XHTML. In that case, you have to use a character set attribute and avoid pragmas. Pragmas is a compiler directive that allows you to provide additional information to the compiler. Great. Cool, I'm going to take a drink of water or a drink of tea right quick. Okay. Declaring and encoding HTML characters in HTTP. As per the character encoding declaration rules for HTTP headers, it will override the declaration within the page. Until and unless you modify the server settings, as mentioned earlier, you cannot get the same declaration in both the HTTP header and the content body. So if you are working with a client or in a team, you need to tell your client or manager to give you this access to control the declarations. This is somewhat the only way. On limited occasions, markup authors modify declarations with limited access to the server. Check with the HTTP header if the character encoding is declared already. You may be able to change the encoding information either locally for content created through the scripting language or through a set of files on a server. There are online tools to check the server-generated code. W3C is a highly popular one. So that's the one that we had used to check our index HTML file that we had created, the W3. I'm actually gonna to finish reading this for now. It's a great resource. If I have questions on encoding later, I'll definitely come back to it. But I think it's going a little bit further in detail on HTML and encoding than I need at this moment. So I'm going to move on. All right, now we are working with text. So for this lesson, most content on the web is text-based. You will find yourself needing to work with HTML text elements quite a bit. In this lesson, we will learn about the text-based elements you are likely to use the most. So the overview is how to create paragraphs, how to create headings, how to create bold text, italicized text, the relationship between nested items, and then how to create HTML comments. So we're learning just a bit of the syntax here. What would you expect the following text to output on HTML page? It would just be that text. It looks like 2 paragraphs of text, so you might expect it to display in that way. However, that is not the case, as you can see below. It just spits out all that was input into the output. When the browser encounters new lines like this in your HTML, it will compress them down into one single space. The result of this compression is that all the text is clumped together into one long line. If we want to create paragraphs in HTML, we need to use the paragraph element, which will add a new line after each of our paragraphs. A paragraph element is defined by wrapping text with a P tag, P for paragraph. So, changing our example from before to use paragraph elements fixes the issue, like so. Headings. So I'm going to write down our P tag just so that we have it. Woo. Paragraph. Now we'll have headings. Headings are different from other HTML elements. They are displayed larger and bolder than the other text to signify that they are a heading. There are 6 different levels of headings starting from H1 down to H6. The number within the heading tag represents that headings level. The largest and most important is H1, while H6 is the tiniest and at the lowest level. Headings are defined much like paragraphs. For example, to create an H1 heading, we wrap our text in H1 tag. So I'm going to write H1 through H6 headings. Great. So using the correct level of heading is important as levels provide a hierarchy to the content. An H1 heading should always be used for the heading of the overall page, and the lower levels should be used should be used as the heading for content in smaller sections of the page. Strong element. It just makes things bold. It also semantically marks text as important. So you can use strong on its own, but you'll probably find yourself using strong more in combination with text elements like listed here. So I'm going to write that down. Strong. Bold. Sometimes, oh, I had a fuzz. Fuzz on my nose. I think it's gone. I think it's gone. Okay. Sometimes you will want to make the text bold without giving it an important meaning. You will learn how to do that in the CSS lessons later in the curriculum. EM element. The EM element makes text italic. It also semantically places emphasis on the text, which again may affect things like screen readers. To define an emphasized element, we wrap it in an EM tag. To use them on its own, it looks like this, but just like the strong tag, we can put it inside other text elements as shown here. I'm going to write that one down too. So EM is italic. Cool. Nesting and indentation. You may have noticed that in all the examples in this lesson, we indent any elements that are within other elements. This is known as nesting elements. When we nest elements within other elements, we create a parent and child relationship between them. The nested elements are the children, and the element that they are nested within is the parent. In the following example, the body element is the parent, and the paragraph is the child. So you can see that it is indented from the body element. Just as in human relationships, HTML parent elements can have many children. Elements at the same level of nesting are considered to be siblings. For example, the two paragraphs in the following code are siblings, since they are both children of the body tag and are at the same level of nesting as each other. We use indentation to make the level of nesting clear and readable for ourselves and other developers who will work with our HTML in the future. It is recommended to indent any child elements by 2 spaces. It is recommended to indent, okay, yes. The parent, child, and sibling relationships between elements will become much more important later when we start styling our HTML with CSS and adding behavior with JavaScript. For now, however, it is just important to know the distinction between how elements are related and the terminology used to describe their relationships. HTML comments. So HTML comments are not visible to the browser, but they allow us to comment on our code so that other developers or our future selves can read them and get some context about something that might not be clear in the code. Writing an HTML comment is simple. We enclose the comment with the following tags. So I'm going to write that down. That is triangle bracket, exclamation point, dash dash, and then text, and then dash dash, triangle bracket. So you can see that in the example there are 2 comments, but they do not print to the actual browser page. So it looks like we're continuing on watching Kevin Powell's videos, but I might skip them for now and just get some practice working with text and HTML. We're going to create a plain blog article which uses different headings, uses paragraphs, and has some text in the paragraphs bolded and italicized. You can use we could use that, but we could also just be a little more creative. Not to be rude. So this is going to now be plain blog post. I'm going to make this a little bit smaller. Perfect. And I'm going to check my layout just to make sure things look okay. Yeah, so we look okay. So our assignment is to use different headers, use paragraphs, and text that is bolded and italicized. So plain blog post. Our main header is going to say another blog post about nothing. Now we're going to have another header, and we're going to say main point one. Then we're going to have a paragraph, and we're going to say this blog post isn't really about much. We're making this up on the fly. Thank you for coming along for the ride! Exclamation point. And now we're going to add another header. So this is going to be another header too. Main point 2. Paragraph. This paragraph is primarily here so we can show off our ability to use bold and strong elements in our HTML. Final thoughts. This blog post really wasn't about anything, but we made something, and that's kind of cool. Okay, so now I'm going to go back to our GUI, open this up. Wow. And look at what we made. Isn't it beautiful? Amazing. Our first one, it has actual substance in there. Doesn't do anything, but I think I've actually made one like this before. But that's besides the point. We did the thing. So now let's check. Do we know how to create a paragraph? Yes. We use opening bracket, P, closing bracket, and then it either autocorrects so it has the /P element to close that out, or we type it. Easy peasy. And then how do you create a heading in HTML? You use H1 through 6, depending on what type of heading you want. The larger ones are for more important text. So if you wanted the heading right at the top of your screen that said like this lesson episode 7, going over HTML elements, then that's what we would put right up at the top. And then how many different levels of headings are there? We kind of already touched on this. There's 6 levels. What is the difference between them? They indicate the importance of the text. So, and like, yeah, they make it like less and less important or smaller and smaller. What element should you use to make the text bold and important? You should use the strong element. What element should you use to make the text italicized and add emphasis to it? That's the EM or emphasis element. And then what relationship does an element have with any nested element within it? So that is a parent-child relationship if an element is nested within another element. And then what relationships do 2 elements have if they are the same level of nesting? That would be siblings. And then how do you create HTML comments? Oh, I forgot to do that one. But that's pretty simple. That's an open bracket, exclamation point, dash, dash, whatever your comment is, dash, dash, and then closing bracket. Additional resources. So the additional, we'll just click on it. So this is talking about the difference between strong and bold, and then emphasized versus italics. So when to use the strong tag? So we convey importance, urgency, or seriousness in our markup. So we need to indicate the importance or urgency of a word without changing the meaning of the name itself, of the content itself. Emphasis places stress emphasis on a particular piece of content in a way that changes the actual meaning of the content. Whenever we want to emphasize something in our markup with verbal stress, we should use emphasis tags. The I tag is used to convey a different mood or voice from the surrounding content. It's often used with foreign words or idiomatic phrases, technical terms, ship names, thoughts, etc. Then when to use the B tag. The B tag draws attention to a word or section of content for utilitarian purposes without conveying extra importance or urgency. It's the least semantic of the HTML tags we've discussed and should only be used when no other tag is more appropriate. Cool. That makes sense to me. And then an interactive HTML article. So this HTML contains several elements for defining text with special meanings. So bold, italics, subtext, or subscript, superscripts. These are our elements. Bold versus strong, italics versus emphasis, small text, Cute. Oh. You can get deleted text by using the del element and it'll strike through. That's cool. You can insert, and a browser will usually underline the inserted text. Subscript, superscript. Excuse me so much. So here's a test. What we want is to add extra importance. So we're going to use strong. Yay! So that was correct. And then it just has this list again. Bold, emphasis, italics, small, strong, subscript, superscript, insert, delete, and then highlight or mark. Cool. We finished another lesson. Moving on to the next one. This is lists. Lists. Not lists. Which sound very similar actually. But whether it be IMDb's top 250 movies or FBI's most wanted, lists are everywhere on the web, and you are going to need one eventually in your web page. Luckily, with HTML, there are a couple of different types of lists at your disposal. So I'm just going to write down the lists on our page right here. So we can keep track of where we're at. All right. So in this lesson, we're going to learn how to create an unordered list and then how to create an ordered list. So an unordered list, if you want to have a list of items where the order does not matter, like a shopping list of items that can be bought in any order, which is not how I shop. That's wrong. That's okay. I will talk more about that once we get to the ordered list section. Then you can use an unordered list. Unordered lists are created using the UL element, and each item within the list is created using the list item li. So in my, oh, wrong one. You can go back. In here, what I'm going to do, is we're going to just test this out. So I'm going to make a list, UL, and we're going to make a list item. But before that, I'm going to make a little header. This is going to be H, what have I used so far? 1, 2, and 3, so we're going to make H4. And then that's gonna, oh, cool. Header, this is gonna be our unordered list. So our first list item, our unordered list, sorry, I am going to use books on my shelf as my title. And I'm just going to list them off. So the first one is room. The next one is 7S. 7 Eves. I say that wrong every time. Has anyone read that book? I've gotten just a little way through it. We have the spelling. The Bhagavad Gita. We have Capital. And then we're going to end with the bell jar. Great. So that's our unordered list. Now we're going to make another header. We're going to say H4 are ordered. Okie dokie. So I'm going to save this. We're going to go back, refresh, and look at that. We have our unordered list of the books that I listed from my shelf. Amazing. Now, ordered lists. So if you want to create lists from top to bottom, step by step, you can list them in an order. So ordered lists are created using the OL element instead of the UL, so unordered versus ordered. And each individual item in them is again created using the list element LI. However, each item will be listed with a number instead of a dash. Oh, and it has a bunch of lists for us to make. But I'm going to, I guess I can, no, I'm gonna finish my project before I see to theirs. Have my priorities in check, okay? So there's an ordered list, and I'm going to list the ingredients that I got from the store. I won't do all of them because I don't want to bore you, but, and I will show you how I do this too. Ah! I put this in the wrong place. Just took me a second, okay? So we have our ordered list. Our first element is going to be, I'm actually going to make another header. So this is going to be header 5. So our first list is going to be from the fresh produce section. And today, all I needed were scallions and an onion. And then I'm going to say the final aisle because, oh, that's the wrong way to spell that. that right? I think that's better. Because the final aisle at the Safeway that I go to it has a whole bunch of different things that I needed, and it's like on the way to the self-checkout. So it had polenta, and then all-purpose flour. Ha ha ha, helps if I list it. Flour. Then some spices that I needed. And then finally, broth. And that is what I got from the store today. So we're going to refresh this and see our ordered list. So we have our ordered grocery list, and then below it we can see that we needed scallions and onions from the produce section, and then from the final aisle, polenta, flour, spices, and broth. And that's kind of in order as you walk down the aisle, because I have the layout of the Safeway memorized, and allows you to walk into the Safeway, immediately turn to the left into the produce section, walk around behind, and then walk through that final aisle, getting these things in this order as you walk forward towards the self-checkout. It's very efficient. I would shop no other way. Okay. But looking now at the lists that they want us to include, we are going to make another header. This is going to be H4. H4 or H3? I have to remember. Yes, H4. Great, and the title of this, we are going to name it List of My Favorite Foods. And that is going to be an unordered list. Here we go. List element is going to be macaroni and cheese. Gotta love it. Then we are going to list pizza, burritos, then what else do we want to put? Sweets. I have such a sweet tooth. That's going to be my list for now, my unordered list. And then we are going to make another list, H4. This one is called To Do Today. Ordered list. And I have my to-do list right here in front of me. So again, I'm just going to put this on here. So what I needed to do today was get groceries, fold my laundry, which I've done, both of those things. So look into ComSci course progression. I was basically just looking for a ComSci degree sheet that was listed on any university website to see what classes were standard for a ComSci degree, and then figure out what order they were supposed to be in so that I could better set my expectations and look into what I needed to learn. On that note, Have not done that one. Might not get to it. Stream. That's what I'm doing now. Take a nap. It is literally on my to-do list. And then make dinner. Cool. So now we're going to make another one that is places I want to visit. This is an unordered list, so we're going to use UL, and then we're going to just list Japan, Norway, Brazil, literally everywhere. China would be cool. India would be cool. Basically everywhere. Then we're going to make a final list called our top 5 video games. So list element here is going to be Stardew Valley. And Control. Love that game. And we're going to also Minecraft Classic, Stress Relief. Dead Space is another classic. It's hard to pick favorites, but like Zelda, Wind Waker. It's the one I've spent the most time on. Breath of the Wild is also really good, but I'm gonna say that this one takes the cake. And then something that I'm gonna do. No, that's fine. I'm gonna save it. And then we just have a whole bunch of lists. Look at that. Wow. So knowledge check, what is the tag used to create an unordered list? That's UL. What's to create an ordered list? That's OL. What's to create a list item within either? That is LI. And then we have documentation on both unordered and ordered lists. And then this lists tutorial, but I'm gonna skip it and mark this as complete. Next lesson. I'm gonna just take a peek right quick at how far along in the HTML that we are, because I'm curious. That was kind of my goal today, is to get through all this HTML foundations. And it looks like we're actually pretty close to accomplishing that, which is really exciting to me. because we have the HTML foundations and then we have the CSS foundations, Flexbot, JavaScript, and then conclusion, backend and conclusion. It's not like near the end, but we are definitely making our way through the material. It says that we're just under 40% of the way through. I'm really excited with the progress that we've made, and thanks for coming along for the ride. And I'll stop blabbering on about it right now and just dive back in. Okay. So links are one of the key features of HTML. They allow us to link to other HTML pages on the web. In fact, this is why it's called the web. In this lesson, we'll learn how to create links and add visual flair to our websites by embedding images. Ooh, fancy. So, lesson overview. This section contains a general overview of every time. I had skipped it like once. I did so good and like didn't read it one whole lesson. So how to create web pages and how to create links to other web pages on the internet. Why am I talking like that? Sometimes it just sneaks out of me, you know. Sometimes it just bloop. I was born and raised in Oklahoma, so it's like sometimes it just rears its little bumpkin head. Not normally on purpose. How to create links in other pages. Not that there's, I mean, I love. Dismount. How to create links to other pages on your own websites. The difference between absolute and relative links. How to display an image on web page using HTML. Preparation. To get some practice using links and images throughout this lesson, we need an HTML project to work with. So we're going to create a new directory named Odin Links and Images. CD desktop. Make directory. What's it called? Odin links and images. CD Odin link and images. Touch index.html. Code dot. That's my favorite shortcut, by the way, the code dot, because it just like plop sends you straight into that directory so you can edit it. I'm going to make sure that this random web page we made is saved, which it now is, and I'm going to exit out of that instance of VS Code, and then I'm going to make our Chrome window just slightly smaller so that it can be over to the side, and then we'll have VS Code. Can I move you, please? Thank you. Thank you. So moving. All right, now we're within our index.html. We're going to start with our boilerplate, but I'm going to do it by hand. So doc type HTML, and then below that we're going to have HTML lang equals English. There we go. There's our HTML, and then we're going to have our header. This is called links and images. Now we're going to have our body. And now that we have our body, I forgot. Within our HTML, we also need our meta character set. It is equal to, is that an equal sign? I think it is. This also goes within the head element. I'm glad I wrote that down, and I'm glad that we're practicing this. Thanks for okay. Now, within our body, we can add our header of homepage. Homepage. Cool. Cool. So now we are going to add an anchor element. So to create a link in HTML, we use the anchor element, and it is wrapped in text with an A tag. So we're just going to, below our header, yay! Did I write down how to, I don't think I did. So I'm going to look up the shortcut to open HTML file in terminal. Oh, this is Apple though. I don't know if it'll work. Great. Y'all, we did it. I'm going to exit out of our plain blog post though. Cool. So yeah, we looked at it and the anchor doesn't actually do anything because the tag on its own won't know what we want to link to. We have to tell it a destination to go to, and we'll do this by using an HTML attribute. An attribute gives additional information to an HTML element and goes in the opening tag. So an attribute is usually made up of two parts, a name and a value. However, not all attributes require a value. In our case, we need to add a hyperlink reference attribute to the opening anchor. And then we also need to actually add the URL. So add the following href to the element anchor. So I'm just going to copy this. Copy. And then paste that right there. I'm going to save. I'm going to refresh. And now look at that. It takes us directly to the Odin project. Pretty fancy. Oh, excuse me. Cool. By default, any text wrapped within an anchor tag without an href attribute will look like plain text. If the href attribute is present, the browser will give it a blue color and underline it to signify it as a link. It is worth noting that you can use anchor tags to link to any kind of resource on the internet, not just other HTML documents. You can link to videos, PDF files, images, and so on. But for the most part, you will be linking to other HTML documents. Absolute and relative links. Generally, there are two kinds of links we can create. Links to go to pages on other websites on the internet, or links to pages located on our own website. So absolute links are links to pages on other websites on the internet are called absolute links. A typical absolute link will be made up of the following parts: protocol, domain, path. An absolute link will always contain the protocol and domain of the destination. We've already seen an absolute link in action. The link created to the Odin project's About page earlier was an absolute link as it contains the protocol and domain. Relative links. Links to pages within our own website are called relative links. Relative links do not include the domain name since it is another page on the same site. It assumes the domain name will be the same as the page we've created the link on. Relative links only include the file path to the other page relative to the page you're creating the link on. This is quite abstract. Let's see this in action using an example. Within the Odin links images directory, create another HTML file called about.html. Where's our terminal? Have done. So we're going to copy and paste the following code into it. Copy. And a paste. There we go. Back in the index page, add the following anchor element to create a link to the About page. So we're going to go back to index.html and we're going to change out, we're just going to add another, a href is equal to about.html So now we're going to click back into our browser. We're going to save this. And now we have Click Me, which takes me directly to the Odin project About page. And then we have our own About, which we haven't really put anything into yet, so it still looks very blank. But it does say About. Why does it say About? Because I haven't saved this. That would be why. Helps when you save it. Okay, cool. So open the index file in the browser and click on the About link to make sure it is all wired together correctly. Clicking the link should go to the page we just created. This works because the index and about page are the same directory. That means we can simply use its name about.html as the link's href value. But we will usually want to organize our website's directories a little bit better. Normally, we would only have the HTML at the root directory and all other HTML files in their own directory. Create a directory named pages within the odin links and images directory and move the about HTML file into this new directory. Come here, terminal. Make dir called, what is it called? What did we say it was called? Pages. CD pages. CD dot dot. Copy. Pulling out my list. I'm pulling out the list. Okay, we're copying. I think I could also just click and drag. Yeah, that works for now. I'll look up the terminal command. Cool. So now we have the about pages within the pages directory. So we'll refresh the index page, and now this doesn't work. Oh, I want that open again. Cool. Alright. Because the location of the about page has changed, the link no longer works. To fix this, we will want to update the about link href value to include the pages directory, since that is the new location of the relative about files location. So we're going to add pages and then save, and now, yay! Now it works. Refresh, and it works. In many cases, this will work just fine. However, you can still run into unexpected issues by using this approach. Prepending / before the link in most cases prevents such issues. By adding / you're specifying to your code that it should start looking for the file relative to the current directory. So we can just add that. I'm going to write down some notes right quick just because it's been a hot minute since we have. So, one thing that I had forgot to write down was our list tags. So, we're going to put that in now. Our unordered list is ul /ul. Our ordered list is ol /ol. And then list elements are li /li. Unordered, ordered, list, element. Alright, now adding a link. Adding a link. A /a is an anchor element. href hyper text reference a href equals quotes URL \a or a href directory path /a. And I'm also going to write down this /note. Include / before file path. For best results, cool. Amazing. All right. Moving on. A metaphor. So absolute and relative links are a tricky concept to build a good mental model of. A metaphor may help. Think of your domain name, town.com, as a town. The directory in which your website is located, /museum, as a museum, and each page on your website as a room in the museum. Relative links, like /shop's coffee shop, are directions from the current room, the museum room, the museum movie room, for example, to another room, the museum shop. Absolute links, on the other hand, are full directions, including the protocol http domain name town.com and the path from that domain name museum shop coffee shop.html. So it would look like that. And that kind of makes sense. Like the way that they described it, that metaphor is actually really good, because if you were within the museum, you're within that directory, you can just like leave the directory and go back. But if you were not even in that town and you were coming from out of town and you had to go directly to the coffee shop from somewhere else in the world, you would need the entire protocol in order to get where you were going, including the town name, which museum it was, and then the directions within the museum. So that's a great metaphor. Good job, Odin Project. Images. Websites would be fairly boring if they could only display text. Luckily, HTML provides a wide variety of elements for displaying all sorts of different media. The most widely used of these is image content. Is the image element. Oops. To display an image in HTML, we use the IMG element. Unlike other elements we have encountered, the IMG element is self-closing. Empty. Self-closing HTML elements do not need a closing tag, much like the meta-char set, which was also self-closing. I'm just going to write down images. IMG. So instead of wrapping content with an open and closing tag, IMG embeds an image into the page using a source attribute, which tells the browser where the file is located. The source attribute works much like the href attribute for anchor tags. It can embed an image using absolute and relative paths. So we could pull an image from a URL, or we could pull one that was saved within our file directory, For example, using an absolute path, we can display an image located on the Odin project site. to use images that we have on our website, we can use a relative path. So create a new directory named images within the Odin links and images project. Make directory called images. Yay, that worked. Oh, it's so cute. Wow. Alright, and now we're going to rename this to dog.jpg. Finally, we're going to add the image to our HTML index. So what we're going to do is in our body, we're going to add our image source is equal to images dog. I love the autocomplete. It's just great. Cool. So we're going to save that, and then we're going to go, and our dog should now show. It's so cute. Something I do want to do though is put this element within a paragraph so that it is not looking the way that it currently looks, which is just really messy. There we go. That looks way better to me. Cool. So we're going to save it, and it shows Charles in all his glory. Now, parent directories. What if we want to use the dog image in the About page? We would first have to go up one level out of the pages to its parent directory so we could then access the image directory. To do this, we're going to use ... just like in the command line. We're going out one, and then we'll be able to find images.jpg. So to break it down, we're using the ... to go to the parent directory of the pages within Odin links images, which is our main directory here. Then from the parent directory, we can go into the images directory, and then we can find and access the dog.jpg. So using the metaphor we learned earlier, it is a file path like stepping out of the room you're currently in so you can go into another room. So I'm going to go to About HTML. I have a bruise on my shin. I just found it. Okay. So we are going to add our image here. Source is equal to ... and then images.jpg, and then we're going to close that. Now when we click on the About tab, it will show up there as well. So alternate attributes, or the alt attribute. Besides the source attribute, every image should also have an alternative text attribute. The alternative attribute is used to describe an image. It will be used in place of that image if it cannot be loaded. It is also used with screen readers to describe what the image is to visually impaired users. This is how the Odin Project logo. Why can I not speak? This is how the Odin Project logo example we used earlier looks with an alt attribute included. So alt, the Odin Project logo. I'm going to add that. Image source equals URL. Image source can equal directory path. And then image source directory path, dir path, or URL attribute alt. Alt is equal to description. Close. So to practice, we're going to add an alt attribute to this lovely picture of Charles. We're going to see if that's okay. I think I'm fine without Kevin Powell. But we are going to add in this alt equals Charles the pug. I don't really think that this will change much, but there you have it. Okay, knowledge check. Oh, I do want to read this though. So there are 4 main image formats in use on the web. And they were all designed to do different things. Understanding their intended purpose goes a long way towards improving the quality of your web pages. The next sections will walk you through the ideal use cases for each of these image formats. Make sure you've unzipped these emojis in. Ooh. I feel called out for whatever reason. Okay. Great. I'm just going to rename that to images 2. My 10 key doesn't work. Cool. No. Cool. Okay. I was like, how did they know about my images file? Because it's made in tandem. Cool. There are 4 main image. Oh, I already did that. But now we have our mochi images in our links, and so it's 1 of each. Great. So JPEG image. They're designed for handling large color palette without exorbitantly increasing file size. This makes them great for photos and images with lots of gradients in them. On the other hand, JPEGs don't allow for transparent pixels, which you can see in the white edges of the photo below if you look real close. So right around, there's just this white edge to it. So embedded this image, we will embed this JPEG into our image HTML page with the following snippet. That was a bad choice on my part. Okay. Okie dokie. Only going to use the arrow keys to navigate that page. What happened here? Did I lose my beat? Okay, there it is. I only saw the body of the body, so I was like, what's going on there? But it was just scrolled to the right. So embed this Mochi JPEG image in our images HTML page with the following snippet. This also includes a bit of navigation to other pages. So we're going to go to, I'm just going to great, and then great. Then our title is going to be images, and then in our body we are going to put in here paragraph. This page, or I can just copy and paste, to be honest. That might be better, because that way I don't have to spend all the time actually. So copy, we're going to just paste that, and then I'm going to say / images 2, and then that's going to be the Mochi JPEG. So I'm going to save this, go back to our link here, and then see what our, oh, but I need to include the link to our images tab. So I'm just going to put here a href equal, a href equals / pages images, close bracket. This will be images. Okay. There we go. And now we have our little mochi. It's great. So this page covers, you might look for links, and they have that linked back here. I don't think those will actually work because we don't actually have those references, but that's fine. So I might actually images, and then I'm going to use, what was the command? it already knew. I love it when it does that. Great, we're gonna just do this, and now they are crossed out. Knew we could do it. Cool. So I'm gonna go back to links and images. So GIFs are the go-to option for simple animations, but the trade-off is that they are somewhat limited in terms of color palette. Never use them for photos. Transparent pixels are a binary option for GIFs, meaning you can't have semi-opaque pixels. This can make it difficult to get high levels of detail on transparent background. For this reason, it's usually better to use PNG images if you don't need an animation. So we can add this to our HTML file with the following. Images, and now we're going to great. GIFs. GIFs are good for animations, and now here we just need to go back out to our main directory. Images is good, and then we need to say images again, images 2, and then pick our GIF. We're going to save that, go back to our page, and then that should have our GIF right there. Now we're going to add a PNG. PNGs are great for anything that's not a photo or an animation. So for photos, PNG is generally the same level of quality that a file of the same quality would generally be bigger than an equivalent JPEG file. However, they do deal well with opacity, and they don't have color palette limitations. This makes them an excellent fit for icons, technical diagrams, logos, etc. So now we're going to add this bit of text, this bit of code below here. And we're going to change our path once more. ... images, images 2, PNG. We're going to save that. Refresh. Wow. So unlike the pixel-based formats above, CVG is a vector-based diagram, meaning it can scale up or down to any dimension without loss of quality. This makes CVG images a wonderful tool for responsive design. They're pretty good. They're good for pretty much all the same cases as PNGs, and you should use them whenever you can. Whenever you can. These 300 by 300 pixel images were originally 100 by 100, but scaling them up clearly shows the difference between them. Notice the crisp, clean lines on the left, while the PNG image on the right is now very pixelated. Despite being a vector format, SVGs can be used exactly like their raster counterparts. Go ahead and add the Mochi SVG image to our HTML page. So here we go. Copy. There, and then we're going to adjust our directory. Boop, images, images to SVG. Cool. Great. There is one potential issue with SVGs. For them to display consistently across browsers, you'll need to convert any text fields. Oh, I'm going to save this and reload. There's one issue with SVGs. For them to display consistently across browsers, you need to convert any text fields to outlines using your image editor. so Adobe Illustrator or Sketch. If your images contain a lot of text, like fancy screenshots in this tutorial, this can have a big impact on the file size. For this reason, internetingishard.com uses PNGs instead of SVGs, even though SVGs are so awesome. I'm going to just double check what... Okay, so that was the whole, that's all we needed. Cool, so knowledge check. This section contains questions for you. We already know that. I did not need to read that. Okay, here we go. What element is used to create a link? That is the A anchor with an href, and then you can post. Yeah. What is an attribute? An attribute is a secondary input that we put inside of our element per se. So if you take meta, for example, meta is the element, and then charset is the attribute that can then take an input for our image element. Source is an attribute, and then also alt is an attribute. What is the difference between an absolute and relative link? So an absolute link takes you like you're headed from an entirely different website, because you are in fact, it is a URL to a new place. A relative link is something within your directory, your website's directory, and you are just navigating around that directory to find the file that you need to reference or need to go to. Which element is used to display an image? So that would be the image element. What two attributes do they always need to have? That is a source and a alternate. So a source is where do we find the image, and then the alt is what is the photo? Some description of it. And then how do you access a parent directory in a file path? You go up, so I would say .. And then what are the four main image formats that you can use for images on the web? We just saw those. Those are JPEG, GIF, PNG, and SVG. So this section, interneting is hard. Treatment on HTML links and images. What happened the day... Oh no! Everything would have broken. Is this a video? No, this is so funny. That is so funny. So Google had to apologize after saying that any URL that had a slash in it was malware, which would have just like made everything turn off. That is so funny. I'm gonna see if this is just that same. Yeah, I think that that's fine. I'm fine without that. Cool. I'm just gonna go in and add some alt attributes to all of our images here, because they were not included in the code that we pasted. So alt equals, this is mochi as a JPEG, and then alt equals mochi as a GIF. Then here alt equals mochi as a PNG. And then finally alt equals mochi as SVG. Great. Next lesson. So there's this lesson and then there's a project that comes after it. I'm thinking that I will do this next lesson, look at the project, see what it entails, and then if it is kind of more intensive, I might just call it there and then tackle the project in the next one. I do feel really like this was kind of a surprise stream. I didn't really list it on the channel. I just had the time and the itch to do it. So my apologies for kind of going off schedule, but I do feel really good about what we accomplished today. And let's just continue on with the message. So with the lesson. So introduction. This lesson will explain the importance of good commit messages, how to write them, and when to commit, and why having a history of good commits is so important. Here we go. So we'll learn how to write a meaningful commit message, why meaningful commit messages are important, and then when to commit. So I'm going to exit out of our Odin links and images directory, make this a little bigger. We can open a new one if we need it pretty easily. Okay, are commit messages so important that they deserve their own lesson? Yes! Let me give you a quick list of reasons why. It's an unordered list, y'all. Okay, when you are applying for jobs, employers will look through your projects on GitHub and they will look through your commit history. Having good commits as a novice developer will help you stand out. Having good commit message history will allow you or other developers working on your code to quickly see what changes were made and why. This is useful if a bug is found in the code that needs to be fixed. Having a good commit message history will also be helpful if you come back to a project you were working on after stepping away from it for a while. You likely won't remember your thought process and changes made when initially writing out the code. When to commit. A good way to view commit is like a snapshot of your code at the moment that commit was made. That version of your code up to that point will be saved for you to revert back to or look back at. When writing code, it is considered best practice to commit every time you have a meaningful change in the code. This will create a timeline of your progress and show that your finished code didn't appear out of nowhere. This means make a commit if you get a piece of code you're working on to function like you want it to, fix a typo, or fix a bug. As you gain experience, you will develop a better feel for what should be committed. There will come a time when you are working on a project and you finally get something just right. This would be a good time to commit. And then maybe 30 seconds to a few days later it breaks. You have no idea what you changed. Everything looks to be the same and you don't remember editing that line, but alas, it isn't working how you want it anymore. You'd be able to go back through your version history, your commit history, either revert your code back to the last commit you made when you first got that part working, or go back and see what your code looked like at that point in time. So this article will walk us through how to write a Git commit message. It covers all the main bases on how to write a good commit message. The whole article is great and informative, but the meat of the article is the 7 rules of a great commit message. So things to remember. Using VS Code as your text editor, which we have set up, will allow you to easily make multi-line commit messages. Easily see the character length of each line, and will allow you to use VS Code spell check extensions to make sure your spelling is correct. Use an active voice, so fix card generator. Avoid vague commit message like saved or updated, and then commit early and often. So what are 2 benefits of having well-written commit messages and a good commit history? So it lets you know, I'm going to start with the last one. When you write a good commit message and you have a bit of code that is working correctly, and then later on you've made some edits and you don't know why it's working, you can go back to your commit history, see the commit message that like, wow, finally got this working, and you can go back and look at that specific version for how the code is different and what might have changed. Another good reason for another benefit of having well-written commit messages is just to have a log of the things that you've changed. Another benefit is that employers can then go and look at those logs and see what types of edits you're making and committing. So, yeah. And see that it is a practice that you actively hold. So how many characters should this subject line of your commit message be? This one we haven't learned yet. So this section contains one way to formulate high information commit messages is to follow a template. Conventional commits is one of many commit message templates that you can explore. So we might check that out later. But for right now, I'm going to exit out of our own project links and images and open up how to write a commit message. This is really funny. So there's this. It's just like as the project goes on and on, the Git commit messages are like worse and worse. He has like, here's some code, here have code, and then just like smashing on the keyboard. It's really funny. Introduction: why good commit messages matter. If you browse the log of any Git repository, you will probably find its commit messages are more or less a mess. For example, take a look at these gems from my early days committing to Spring. So, Git log, one line. Yikes. Compare that with these more recent commits from the same repository. So, he said re-adding configuration post-processor tests after blah, fixed two built-in build breaking issues and reverted class meta visitor, tweaks to package info Java files, consolidated. So it's just a lot. It's not very efficient. Which would you rather read? The more efficient version, for sure. The former varies in length and form, the latter is concise and consistent. The former is what happens by default, the latter never happens by accident. While many repositories' logs look like the former, they are the exceptions. There are exceptions. The Linux kernel and Git itself are great examples. Look at Spring Boot or any repository managed by Tim Pope. The contributors to these repositories know that a well-crafted Git commit message is the best way to commute context about a change to a fellow developer, and indeed to their future selves. A diff will tell you what changed, but only the commit message can properly tell you why. Peter Hunter makes this point well. Reestablishing the content of a piece of code is wasteful. You can't avoid it completely, so our efforts should go to reducing it as much as possible. Commit message can do that exactly, and as a result, commit message shows whether a developer is a good collaborator. I had to do a different voice because I was like talking as Peter. Anyway, if you haven't given much thought to what makes Git a great commit message, it may be the case you haven't spent much time using Git log and related tools. That is true. There is a vicious cycle here because the commit history is unstructured and inconsistent. One doesn't spend much time using or taking care of it. And because it doesn't get used or taken care of, it remains unstructured and consistent. Tragic loop. But a well cared-for log is a beautiful and useful thing. Git, blame, revert, rebase, log, short log, and other subcommands come to life. Reviewing others' commits and pull requests becomes something worth doing and suddenly can be done independently. Understanding why something has happened months or years ago becomes not only possible but efficient. A project's long-term success rests, among other things, on its maintainability, and a maintainer has few tools more powerful than his project log. It's worth taking the time to learn how to care for one properly. What may be a hassle at first soon becomes a habit, and eventually a source of pride and productivity for all involved. In this post, I am addressing the most basic element of keeping a healthy commit history: how to write an individual commit message. There are many other important practices like commit squashing that I am not addressing here. Perhaps I'll do that in a subsequent post. Most programming languages have well-established conventions as to what constitutes idiomatic style, naming, formatting, and so on. There are variations on these conventions, of course, but most developers agree that picking one and sticking to it is far better than the chaos that ensues when everybody does their own thing. A team's approach to its commit log should be no different. In order to create a useful revision history, teams should first agree on a commit message convention that defines at least the following three things. Style, so markup, syntax, wrap margins, grammar, capitalizations, punctuation. Spell these things out, remove the guesswork, and make it all as simple as possible. The end result will be a remarkably consistent log that's not only a pleasure to read, but actually does get read on a regular basis. Content. What kind of information should the body of the commit message, if any, contain? What should it not contain? Metadata. How should issue tracking IDs, pull requests, numbers, etc. be referenced? Fortunately, there are well-established conventions as to what makes up an idiomatic Git commit message. Indeed, many of them are assumed in the way certain Git commands function. There is nothing you need to reinvent. Just follow the 7 rules below and you're on your way to committing like a pro. So the 7 rules of a great Git commit. Keep in mind this has all been said before. Cool. So number 1 is separate subject from body with a blank line. Limit the subject line to 50 characters. Capitalize the subject line. Do not end the subject line with a period. Use the imperative mood in the subject line. Wrap the body at 72 characters. Use the body to explain what and why versus how. So for example, summarize changes in around 50 characters or less. More detailed explanatory text if necessary. Wrap to 72 characters or so. In some contexts, the first line is treated as the subject of the commit and the rest of it is the body. The blank line separating the summary from the body is critical unless you omit the body entirely. Various tools like log, short log, and rebase can get confused if you run the two together. Explain the problem that the commit is solving. Focus on why you are making this change as opposed to how the code explains that. Are there side effects or other unintuitive consequences of this change? Here's the place to explain them. Further paragraphs come after blank lines. Bullet points are okay too, typically a hyphen or asterisk if it is used for the bullet, preceded by a single space with blank lines in between, but conventions vary here. If you use an issue tracker, put references to them in the bottom like this: resolves ticket number 123, but also see 456 and 789. So, number 1, separate subject from body with a blank line. Though it's not required, it's a good idea to begin the commit message with a single short line, 50 characters or less. summarizing the change followed by a blank line and then more thorough description. The text up to the first blank line in a commit message is treated as the commit title, and that title is used throughout Git. For example, git format patched 1 turns a commit into email, and it uses the title on the subject line and the rest of the commit in the body. Firstly, not every commit requires both a subject and a body. Sometimes a single line is fine, especially when the change is so simple that no further context is necessary. For example, fix typo in Introduction to User Guide. Nothing more here needs to be said. If the reader wonders what the typo was, she can simply take a look at the change itself, use git show, git diff, or git log-p. If you're committing something like this at the command line, it's easy to use the -m options to git commit. Git commit -m, fix typo, you see it. However, when a commit merits a bit of explanation and context, you need to write a body. For example, there's a title and then there's body. Commit messages with bodies are not so easy to write with the im option. You're better off writing the message in a proper text editor. If you do not already have an editor set up for use with Git at the command line, read this section of ProGit. But this is something that we saw in the previous episode, or 2 episodes ago, where we actually opened up our Git commit message within VS Studio using the command line in VS Studio. I'll have to look up that shortcut for that. But I know we've done it. That's fine. In any case, the separation of subject from body pays off when browsing the log. Here's the full log entry. Git log, commit number, author, date, DRAS master control program. MCP turned out to be evil and has become intent on world domination. This commit throws Tron's disk into MCP, causing its disk resolution, and turns it back into a chess game. Great. And now git log one line, which prints out just the subject line. Or git short log, which groups commits by user, again showing just the subject line for concision. There are a number of other contexts in Git where the distinction between subject line and body kicks in, but none of them work properly without the blank line in between, so that's really important. Limit to 50 characters. It's not a hard limit, just a rule of thumb, so that makes sense. You don't want it too long. It should be a single line, like a single sentence. So Git is also aware of this convention, and so it'll warn you if you go past the character limit. And will truncate any subject line longer than 72 with an ellipses. That's great. So shoot for 50 characters, but consider 72 the hard limit. Capitalize the subject line. As simple as it sounds, begin all subject with a capital letter. Don't use a period to end the subject line. Trailing punctuation is unnecessary. Besides, space is precious when you're keeping to 50 characters or less. Use the imperative mood. So this just means as though you're giving a command or instruction. So each of the 7 rules you're reading about right now are written in the imperative. So imperative can sound rude. That's why we don't use it often in real IRL. But it's perfect for Git command subject lines. One reason for this is that Git itself uses the imperative when it creates a commit on your behalf. For example, the default message created when git merge reads as follows: merge branch my feature. And when using git revert the thing. Or when clicking the merge button on GitHub pull requests. merge pull request 123 from some user. So when you write your commit messages in the imperative, you're following Git's own built-in conventions. I just realized I might have had the volume down for most of this, so I'm just going to turn that back up, just in case I've been really quiet. I'm so sorry if you couldn't hear me. If I'm super loud now also, I guess I'll hear it when I go over the footage for posting it. Good to know for next time though. Okay. So when you write your commit messages in the imperative, you're following Git's own built-in conventions. For example, refactor subsystem X for readability, update getting started documentation, remove deprecated methods, release version 1.0. Writing this way can be a little awkward at first. We're more used to speaking in the indicative mode, which is all about reporting facts. That's why commit message often read like this. Fixed bug with Y. Changing behavior of X. And sometimes commit messages get written as description of their contents. More fixes for broken stuff, sweet new API methods. To remove any confusion, here's a simple rule to get it right every time. A properly formed git commit subject line should always be able to be completed with the following sentence. If applied, this commit will, then your subject line. So, for example, if applied, this command will refactor subsystem X for readability. This commit will release version 1.0.0. That's a really useful tip. This doesn't work for the other non-imperative forms, like this commit will fixed bug with Y. Just doesn't work. So wrap the body at 72 characters. Git never wraps text automatically. When you write the body of a commit message, you must mind its right margin and wrap manually instead. The recommendation is 72 characters, so Git has plenty of room to indent text while still keeping everything under 80 characters overall. A good text editor can help here. It's easy to configure Vim, for example, to wrap text at 72 characters when you're writing a Git commit. Traditionally, however, IDEs have been terrible at providing smart support for text wrapping and commit messages. Although in recent versions, Intel I.J. IDEA has gotten better about this. Then finally, rule number 7, use the body to explain what and why versus how. This commit comes from Bitcoin Core, which is a great example of explaining what changed and why. So their title is Simplify Serialize.h's exception handling. So remove the state and accept mask from serial as well as related methods. As accept mask always included fail bit, and set state was always called with bits equals fail bit, all it did was immediately raise an exception. Get rid of those variables and replace the set state with direct exception throwing, which means removing some dead code. As a result, good is never reached after a failure. There are only 2 calls, one of which is in tests, and can be replaced by fail, clear, and exceptions are just never called. Delete them. So take a look at the full diff and just think how much time the author is saving fellow future committers by taking time to provide this context here and now. If he didn't, it would probably be lost forever. In most cases, you can leave out details about how a change has been made. Code is generally self-explanatory in this regard. And if the code is so complex that it needs to be explained in prose, that's what source comments are for. Just focus on making clear the reasons why you made the changes in the first place, the way things worked before the change, and what was wrong with that. The way they work now, and why you decided to solve it the way you did. The future maintainer thinks you may be yourself. So learn to love the command line, leave the IDE behind. For as many reasons as there are Git subcommands, it is wise to embrace the command line. Git is insanely powerful. IDEs are too, but in each in different ways. I use an EDE every day. I have also been using others extensively, but I have never seen an integration for Git that could begin to match the ease and powers of the command line once you know it. Certain Git-related IDE functions are invaluable, like calling git rm, where you delete a file, and doing the right stuff with Git when you rename one. Where everything falls apart is when you start trying to commit, merge, rebase, or do sophisticated history analysis through IDE. When it comes to wielding the full power of Git, it's the command line all the way. Remember that whether you use bash, zsh, PowerShell, there are tab completion scripts that take much of the pain out of remembering the subcommands and switches. So the Git Pro book is available for free online, and it's fantastic, so take advantage. Cool. So 50 characters is the answer for that one. Okay, so here's our first project. I'm just going to read through this, but I'm not going to get started on it today because I am running out of steam. Cool. It's time to practice the HTML knowledge you have acquired. In this project, you are going to build a basic recipe website. The website will consist of a main index page which will have links to a few recipes. The website won't look very pretty by the time you finish, not unless you're into brutalized web design, that is. It's important to keep in mind that this project is just to build your HTML chops. We'll revisit the project in the future to style it up with CSS. So, setting up your GitHub repository. As mentioned in Introduction to Git, you'll want to organize all your projects like a portfolio and link to them in GitHub so it can easily be seen by others. If you do not know how to set up a repository, follow the instructions found in Git Basics to learn how. Create a new repo for this project on GitHub and call it Odin Recipes. Move that repository onto your local machine inside repos folder that you had previously created in the Git Basic lesson. This command should look something like this. Now cd into the Odin Recipe project directory now that it is on your local machine. Set up your README file with a brief description describing the current project is and what skills you have demonstrated once you have completed it. This is also a good self-reflection at the end of the project, which is a good way to review what you've learned. If you're having trouble, all Git commands need to be run from inside your projects folder. Did you forget to cd into Odin Recipes? Ensure that you follow the steps here on steps 2.3 to clone GitHub with SSH. And then remember to follow the workflow in Git Basic lesson. So, don't forget to commit. And don't forget everything about the messages. When you are building your project, you'll probably end up doing several git add, git commit cycles before being ready to push to git push with git push. When writing code, it's considered best practice to commit early and often. Commit every time you have a meaningful change in code. And this will create a timeline of your progression and show that your finished code didn't appear out of nowhere. After you have entered git push origin main, switch over to your browser and open your repository on GitHub. You should now see all the files you've pushed. Okay, that's enough Git for the moment. Time to actually build stuff. And then this is saying what we're going to do. So we'll make an index file, fill it with the boilerplate, and add h1 Odin recipe to the body. Create a new directory within the Odin recipes directory and name it recipes. Create a new HTML file within recipes. So all of this we are going to do at the start of the next episode because I want to challenge my brain. And forcing myself to do this at the start of the next one is going to have me, it's going to cause me to have to remember the following day. So I think that if I did it today, that would be a good exercise, but I think that it would not be as good as making myself remember it after the fact, if that makes sense. So we're going to come back to that in the next one, and I will end it here. Yeah, we learned a lot today. It was really great working through the HTML. I feel like we have more skills, and in the next episode we are going to build our first live Git project. I know we had one sort of in Git, but that was more just learning how to use it. This is actually going to be real code, real HTML, not fake stuff. So see you later, and thank you again. Bye.